Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and what a delight to have back with us today Dr. Gerard Lameiro. He is author, a philosopher, an economist, an engineer. He writes books. He jumps tall buildings and outruns locomotives. His book that really kind of shook things up, Great News for America. Yeah, Great News for America. I encourage you to get this book because it's still very relevant. And it's called Great News for America. You can go to greatnewsforamerica.com, but look for it at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. He's worked on various campaigns, actually including Ronald Reagan's campaign, and he was an electoral college voter for Ronald Reagan. He got to cast his vote for Ronald Reagan. I got electoral college vote, but I never got to cast it. So anyway, and he has another feather in his cap. He has received the largest YouTube download in the Dove broadcasting history. 126,000 people viewed the interview that I had with Dr. Lameiro 1 week before the election. I think it's time for you to take over and me go fishing. How's that?
I don't think I would fish well, and I think people would miss you.
Well, good to see you, my friend. Merry Christmas. How's it going?
Merry Christmas. Well, it's as busy as it's really amazing how busy it is.
Well, your research, your prediction came to pass as far as the election is concerned. There's some more things happening out there. By the way, for those who don't know, Dr. Lameiro, you researched most of the presidential election cycles. You not only looked at numbers, but most importantly, and this fascinates me, you looked at the mood of the country, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I tried to understand what was going on, and just so I'd be better prepared. I did this big research project in 2015 because from the numbers, I was seeing strange things that I thought this would be an unusual year. So I went back to 1789 and studied every major presidential election in detail, and I found, remarkably, a pattern. And we were in that pattern, and it was about to repeat. So in 2015, I wrote Great News for America because this was going to be a historic and critical presidential election, and I don't use those terms lightly. And it turned out that it was both those things, historic and critical. And we have a change in the country, we have political realignment of the parties, and we have a lot of other things described in that book.
Just kind of curious, did you ever read the book or gone to the website called Fourth Turning?
That sounds familiar. Not recently. Has it been around for a while?
It has, and it's in the subject of generational science and the reoccurring of events through generations. And the reason I bring that up is that
it
book
sounds familiar.
It fits exactly what you were writing about, that we would be coming through some kind of a major shakeup.
It sounds familiar. I have a feeling I may have read that years ago. I read an awful lot. I don't necessarily remember everything. I remember a lot, but I may not remember the detail on that. I have to think about it.
Yeah. Well, listen, some things are coming out of this that's very interesting. You had talked a lot on previous shows with me about the demise of what we now know as the press, the media, and it was a factor in this election. Their own credibility was a factor in this election.
Right.
Where do you think it is, and where do you think it's going?
Well, I think it's exactly what I described in the book last year was going to happen. I predicted the end of the mainstream media as we know it, and I no longer call it the mainstream media. I now call it the old mainstream media because I think it's over. And to finish out what I said in the book, I said it was the end of the mainstream media as we've known it to influence presidential elections. They did not influence this presidential election because they were totally on board the Clinton campaign. They did everything they possibly could to keep Trump from winning, and they failed. 70% of the American people now think the mainstream media, what used to be called that, the old mainstream media, is dishonest, and they've lost credibility.
You even had the Pope yesterday say that it's a sin to publish false news.
Well, I think since he believes in the Ten Commandments and that, I would assume that it is a sin to tell a lie.
All right, so the end of the old mainstream media means what? What happens to them? Because, you know, what's interesting, after the election, they were trying to admit that they were out of touch by saying that perhaps they didn't communicate well and the viewer and the listener didn't understand well. I mean, they didn't own anything, but they did recognize the fact they're in trouble.
Well, I think what's going to happen is this is a free market economy, even though it's highly regulated, but it's still basically capitalism. And what happens is when the people reject you, your business model breaks, your revenues decline, you have layoffs. And we've seen that at USA Today, New York Times, layoffs, that sort of thing. And what happens in a free enterprise type economy is new people step up to the plate. You know, if you don't like the hamburger stand down the road, you go to a different hamburger stand. And that's what we're seeing. In every critical and historic presidential election, there is a new mainstream media that arises. The new mainstream media that started on November 9th, officially, and that is the social media, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and many, many more websites that offer news. That is the new thing, along with talk radio, which has really come up in the last few years and is dominating in news analysis because people believe shows like yours are fundamentally honest.
All right, social media. We have a president-elect that tweets. He may not have to hold a news conference.
That's right. And by the way, it's quite effective. I think he has about 50 million followers on Facebook and Twitter. That's pretty significant. And in a matter of seconds, he can reach all those people and not go through the New York Times, the Washington Post, ABC, NBC, or CBS. Well, he doesn't have to go through them.
Do you think there's going to be an onslaught from the old mainstream media trying to find footing with him while in the meantime he can communicate with his constituents without him?
Oh, they may try. You know, I think they'll try to do things to stay alive. For one thing, they're going to switch their emphasis to the internet. But nevertheless, if you don't have credibility, you're not going to get a significant audience. And they've lost credibility. It's going to be difficult for them to get it back. Because when you lie to someone once or twice and they get the idea you're lying to them, they don't believe you. And it's hard to regain that trust.
One of the question, Dr. Lameiro, as it relates to the media, I find it very interesting because I'm kind of a news junkie. That's why I do what I do. But I cut my teeth in this business in talk radio years ago, and I find it very interesting that talk radio, in spite of the outcome of the election, is still extremely cynical. I'm trying to scratch my head. I say, hey, wake up, guys, you won. It maybe hasn't registered with them yet. What do you think that is?
Well, for those people who are still somewhat skeptical, they're still trying to get through the shock. Don't forget, a lot of people, even on the conservative side, believed those polls. You remember 2 weeks before 2 weeks before the election, we had one poll, I think it was ABC, that had Hillary winning by 12%, and saying things like, we had the mainstream media at that time saying things like, this election is over. There's no reason to have a third debate. Hillary has won. Trump is over. If Trump gets elected, the stock market would do terribly. It's just the opposite. The Dow Jones has had 11 or 12 new highs in its history since the election of Donald Trump. So they got their forecast on the stock market wrong, they got the polls wrong, they got the winner wrong, and a lot of people are still waking up from that shock, even amongst those who would be considered conservative.
All right, let me take a break. We'll come back. I want to lean on your economic acumen a little bit to see what you think the economy is going to go and what the debt may do to us. We're talking to our good friend, Dr. Gerard Lameiro, and he is the author of a book. By the way, this book is fascinating. It's just fascinating. I read it in 2 nights. It's called Great News for America. You can check it out at Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can go to greatnewsforamerica.com. That's Dr. Lameiro's website. You might want to read this book. Now, he wrote the book long before the election, so you may want to read it and take a look at it. We'll be right back.
I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.
Welcome back to Focus Today, and an honor to have back with us Dr. Gerard Lameiro, author, philosopher, economist, engineer, a gentleman who did incredible research on the election cycles as leading up to this past election, wrote a book called Great News for America. And he predicted a conservative turnaround in this country, and what he writes in that book is still unfolding. I would say get it. It would make a great Christmas gift. You can check it out at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, or go to greatnewsforamerica.com. All right, Dr. Lameiro, I'm not sure how to ask this next question, but given I'm not an economist. I play one on TV once in a while, but I'm not, I'm not an economist. The stock market versus a crash versus an adjustment. It could be the market, could be just the economy. Inflation versus recession. You have pointed out earlier that a lot of people predicted if Trump was elected, the whole thing was just going to collapse. But don't you feel that there has to be an adjustment somewhere down the road?
Well, it's going to be good. One of the things I predict in the book, or at least talk about in the book, is the fact the economy is going to go up again. I mean, when you look at the policies that Trump has promised to bring to America, it's going to be a phenomenal turnaround. We're going to have supply-side tax cuts that are going to influence the middle class as well as people with money so they can invest more. You're going to have basically cuts in things like corporate taxes, which is going to tend to have many more jobs in the U.S., make us much more competitive worldwide. I basically see it's going to take about 2 years to have all the investments start playing out and making money. But I think in 2 years' time, this economy is going to be booming. And the stock market going up and hitting 11 or 12 new highs since the election is an incredible leading indicator of what the market expects. The market, you know, some of the smartest people I've met in my career have been financial people who invest money. And it seems like they are awake at the wheel. They are always trying to really figure out what's happening and really try to understand underlying issues like a lot of other people ignore. And the reason they do that is they're investing other people's money and they don't want to lose it. And the fact that they're investing this heavily and they're moving money around to those investments they think are going to be strong energy stocks, my guess is I bet, even though I haven't looked recently, I bet the energy stocks are part of that boom, because we know that Trump plans to allow America to become energy independent, which was being held back by the current administration. So when you look at the economy overall, I expect a booming time. And you had mentioned the national debt, which is up right around $20 trillion now. Few dollars more or less. I think it's gone over 20 trillion now as of today. And that we're going to chip away at that national debt, because when you have 4% growth, which this country could see, 4% GDP growth, and that you are going to be able to pay off the debt because of that incredible growth. There's nothing like compound interest. And when you have money coming in, you know, at the kind of rate that a 4% GDP would create, you're going to have a great economy.
U.S. Steel has announced that they're reconsidering staying, which means about 10,000 jobs. We saw Carrier stay, which meant about 1,000 to 1,200 jobs. Now, he's only president-elect. He's not president yet. And so I guess my question is, what did he say to Carrier to get him to stay? And is the 35% penalty tax for leaving the country a factor for U.S. Steel sticking around?
Well, it may be, but actually the penalties aren't what's really going to get people to stick around. His cutting regulations, which he's promised, and I think he said that he's going to try to cut every regulation that gets in the way of economic growth and just have regulations that affect safety and the environment, a few things that are high priorities. That's what's going to make a difference. And by the way, when you talk about home runs, how about bringing in the president of SoftBank from Japan, and he leaves in front of the elevators. You know, they have the elevators in Trump Tower. Trump says yes, he's decided to invest $50 billion in the United States, which is going to create 50,000 new jobs, and others are expected to follow suit. So Donald Trump didn't make a $10 billion net worth by being stupid. This guy knows how to negotiate, and he knows how to talk people into things. And I think he's going to talk up the economy too, just by doing things like this.
All right, he sent some very strong signals to China over various things, from trade to just jobs and everything else. But then he supposedly takes a congratulatory phone call from Taiwan.
Right.
What'd you think of that call?
I thought it was marvelous, masterful, brilliant. What he did was he sent a message to China, hey guys, business is not going to be like usual. We're going to get some stuff out of this bilateral stuff. In other words, he told the Chinese, it's not business as usual. I am not Barack Obama. I am not going to decide who I'm calling based on what you want me to do. I'm going to do what I want to do because I am the President of the United States, and I'll call anybody in the world. And I think it was brilliant. And he set the stage for negotiation, for essentially coming up with new trade deals, not only with China, but with others, and showing that we're going to, negotiate from a position of strength.
On the other hand, does he put Taiwan at risk where China could just walk in and take it overnight and we wouldn't have the military wherewithal to fight it?
Well, they risk that he's going to increase arms sales to them. And he may very well do that. And it may be part of a leveraging, or at least he's going to get something in return. And as far as them wanting to attack Taiwan or any of our allies and risk us returning fire, I don't think they want to do that. I think they're smarter than that.
He's also said that he wants to get out of the Iran deal, and Iran is waving their saber in the air now saying, oh yeah, we'll do something. Well, what would they do? Besides, they already got a couple of pallet loads of money. Can't we just call it even?
Well, they obviously got the ransom, which was ridiculous because that just encourages more people to be kidnapped, except Donald Trump will not pay ransom. But as far as the Iran nuclear agreement, the normal way for countries to do business, and there were about 6 signatory countries, some of the European countries signed that agreement too. The normal way for an agreement to be ratified by the United States constitutionally, the Constitution calls for the Senate to ratify. Obama made the terrible mistake, if he really wanted this agreement to be ratified, of not sending it to the Senate. So it's never been ratified, and technically it's not really a legitimate treaty. It's an executive agreement. That's how he set it up. So that means Donald Trump, with one signature, can end the Iran nuclear agreement. It's that simple. A very straightforward couple of pages could be signed immediately at a table in the Capitol after the inaugural speech, and that agreement is history.
Interesting. All right. Now, your thoughts on replacing and repealing and replacing Obamacare. He's shown signs that he may have to keep pieces of it. Other advocates are saying, no, completely repeal it and let's come up with something else. In the meantime, he's got Dr. Price in there who may negotiate this deal with Congress. What are your thoughts today about it?
He picked the perfect person. Price is an orthopedic surgeon. He had his own plan that he's already written to replace Obamacare. And as far as him saying that he'd considered, I think that's part of his negotiation. When he met with Obama, he said, well, there are things there that have some value, but that doesn't mean he's not going to replace all of it. I think it's going to all be dead on arrival very quickly. I'm not exactly sure the mechanism he'll use. There are a couple of legal ways he can do it. And of course, he can ask Congress to pass a very quick bill that says the Affordable Care Act is hereby null and void in its entirety. That can be a one-pager, another signature at the U.S. Capitol after the inaugural address if he chooses to. But I do think some of the things that are in Obamacare, there are a few things. that actually are good. I mean, it was 2,700 pages. You're bound to get something right in 2,700 pages, even if 2,650 are wrong. and so, I think there may be a few things, portability, existing condition, different things that they can allow to happen. But I think it's going to be in the context of a free market solution. There's going to be competition. And I totally agree with him from an economist's point of view that the rates are going to decline. I was talking to somebody who is totally depressed that the husband and wife, their premiums were going up to $1,500 a month for the two of them. They were even talking about selling their house. Right. That they couldn't afford their health care insurance. And this is, all these rates are going up January 1st. And so Trump can't get in there soon enough because ultimately the rates will decline, the co-pays will decline, the deductibles, all those things will decline, the premiums, and you won't have so many doctors leaving their practices. So I see that as a high priority for the president.
Wouldn't it be something if he's standing up there giving his inaugural address and he pulls out a piece of paper and signs that order right on the spot and turns around and hands it back to Paul Ryan?
It's a pretty sharp thing, or tweets it, right after he gets done with the speech.
All right. So Harry Reid gave his farewell speech on the Senate floor today. Hurrah. But Nancy Pelosi squeezed out a survival. What do you think is going to happen with the Democratic Party?
Once again, I addressed that in the book. I think it's chapter 6. I see the Democratic Party as having gone off the deep end, literally. It's basically a progressive socialist party. I don't know if they'll change their name. They really should. And I see it as a permanent minority party for the next 20, 30, 40 years.
Ooh.
I don't see them getting back. Do you know that today there are only 4 states in the Union, California, Hawaii, Rhode Island, and Delaware, that have a Democratic governor and a Democratic-controlled legislature? Can you imagine? 4 states only. The Democratic Party is decimated. Obama really finished it off.
But Dr. Lameiro, you can add Oregon to that. We have a Democratic governor and a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate.
Okay, well then I'll have to make it 5. I must have missed you. Sorry.
Well, believe me, we're not proud of it. All right. Well, I wish I had you for a week. Tell me about your new book.
The new book that I'm working on, I've already started writing it, is all about the next 4 years. And I hope it'll come out in January 2018. And I've got 10 big trends I see happening in the next 4 years. And I write about that, and I write about how Trump will deal with those trends and how the American people will deal with those trends and what I think is going to be the State of the Union in 2020.
Can't wait. Let's stay in touch. Good to see you, my friend. If we don't talk before Christmas, Merry Christmas to you and yours. Thanks for being a part of our team. And this is fascinating stuff. Have a great one.
Okay, and by the way, why don't you make this YouTube video go viral again? That was really nice.
Well, I've never seen anything like it. We finally got the final stats on it the day before yesterday. It was over 126,000.
That was amazing.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah. Well, you're an amazing person. Thanks, my friend.
Okay, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. All right, we'll be right back.